Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for making time for us today. We are excited to share the next level Infoblox global server load balancing solution integrated with DNS and how it can lower CapEx and OpEx and keep your network and applications available and running while delivering the network visibility that you need from a single pane of glass, all at a significantly lower cost. My name is Bob Rose. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager located in our Tacoma, Washington office, and I will be moderating today's discussion. We're fortunate to have with us today Senior System Engineer Nathan Snook from our New York, New Jersey office, and also on with us today, but in kind of a behind the scenes capacity, is Scott Friedman, also our senior system engineer, and he's located out of Dallas. Welcome, gentlemen. Great. Well, let's dig in. You know, we live in an on-demand world, right? And networks and apps are being asked to do more and more, connecting to more devices, handling ever increasing IoT endpoints, automating, working across geographies, and in the hybrid cloud. And not to mention, of course, fending off attacks. If we've been watching the news recently, there's been a lot of attacks as well from bad actors. Plus, there's privacy developments in play, like the General Data Protection Data Privacy Requirement, the GDPR, that went into effect back in May in Europe. And so systems really have to be enabled, right, for data privacy protection and business continuity. But, you know, inevitably some will fail. And when they do, the impact of that data compromise is substantial. And certainly when networks and apps are down and slow to respond, what kinds of things, Nathan, do we see when those things happen?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you have, if your DNS services are down, you know, people are going to notice it pretty quickly. You know, so broadly, in broad terms, you know, our responsibility is to the DNS protocol and the applications you're running behind the scenes. You know, making sure those are all, you know, up and with the performance metrics you're looking for.
Exactly, and you know, there are some tools obviously that are out in the marketplace that can help companies reroute network traffic to better manage servers and data centers for business continuity. But certainly,
Yes,
you know,
sir.
some of those things, right, can be pretty expensive. What are some of the other challenges that we see?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is a combination of trying to basically listen to the business needs and meet those needs at the costs that you guys can, basically the companies can handle. You know, so to really just trying to combine those two concerns and look for a solution that meets that. You know, at the end of the day, that's our challenge as technologists.
And Nathan, don't you find though that there are some standalone solutions too? I mean, doesn't that raise capital costs and of course operational costs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the most common, at least in terms of this space, are the most common solution people are looking for are standalone solutions, and what we're trying to do is kind of combine that and kind of give you some additional options, so you don't have to kind of go that kind of fixed route. That's correct.
Yeah, so fortunately, DNS Traffic Control combines DNS management with intelligent global server load balancing functionality for an automated and scalable high-performance unified solution. So today we're going to actually show you how you can quickly and easily and affordably work with Infoblox to assure that your apps are up and available and performing as you expect. And at the same time, we're going to explore some use cases and some load balancing challenges as well. Our goal really in this is to meet you in a two-way conversation that helps us to understand your needs better, but at the same time show you how DTC delivers better performance and quicker returns. And then of course determine if these solutions might benefit you. So let's go ahead and take a look at today's agenda. We're going to just spend a few minutes looking at some of the key IT initiatives and challenges. We're going to overview what DTC is really all about and some of the advantages. We're going to talk about the IPAM integration and some of the use cases. And then for some of you that may not be aware, we're currently on the NIOS 8.3 release. And so we wanted to just overview a couple of those features with you as some of them have yet to deploy those new features. And then also we have some case studies, and then we'll wrap up with a quick Q&A. So let's go ahead and move on. Nathan, as we somewhat alluded to, companies really are focused on application availability. They want high availability and automated processes and operations, and very importantly, a reliable disaster recovery. But what are some of the challenges that we face when we are addressing that area?
Yeah, these are common challenges, but really just essentially like server uptime or application availability broadly, whether it be the database server or front-end servers, middleware, et cetera. So just making sure that the apps are available. And then response time. So you're trying to make sure that, especially if you have a global footprint of your organization, or even just East-West North America, making sure you have the response you're looking for, especially on the DNS protocol side. Response is measured in milliseconds. So, looking at your response, making sure that's tuned to what you need is really critical. And then just basically making sure that you have a regular DR scenario. You have like a fallback mechanism. Are you active, passive, and making sure that that fallback is transparent to everybody involved. So it's not just like someone hunting, pecking, or searching for, oh, something just failed. Let's do a failover process and go through this sheet of steps. Instead, you want to make it as automated as possible.
Exactly, and you just mentioned application performance. So obviously reliability, not in terms of internet only, but also internally, right? Internet, intranet, and then of course being able to do some health checks prior to routing traffic, and ultimately making sure that our global server load balance solution is performing and the apps are performing at a high level. But still, there's challenges, right?
Yeah, and from an application perspective, the challenges on the internal side or intranet are very unique and different from the external side, so the public-facing side of things. So just making sure you have the data for both of those options available, or options available. So on the external side, there's like a Maxmind database you can leverage, and there's some kind of broad public IPs. But the internal side it's really a unique challenge. You have someone only your internal infrastructure, so directing users to the servers you need internally, making sure that's really transparent and easy is really key, and our solution makes that easy.
Yeah, and then of course, visibility is the key, right? You want to be able to look across all of the assets, no matter if they're co-located or perhaps if they're geo-dispersed. So you want really a single pane of glass. You want to have flexible automated monitoring, and certainly it really helps to have some reports and some analytics that are tied to that. But then again, there's always challenges, right?
Yeah, in my experience, we typically had like 3 or 4 different teams that they needed to monitor application uptime, from the developers themselves to the networking folks to the server teams, and then architecture teams. So just making sure everybody has transparency into what's going on is really key. And then if you look at the metrics of that application over time, that's also important. So basically, just kind of to be able to see, okay, here's a big picture of what your the routes for all your application traffic from a server perspective, and then being able to look at that performance over time with reports is really helpful.
Yeah, and absolutely. Another key area is manageability. There are other application delivery controllers that are out there that are pretty expensive. They're tough to spin up, and takes quite a project. So a lot of companies are really looking for something that's fast, easy, and inexpensive to deploy, something that's got a really easy user interface, and something that automates global server load balancing operations. But again, there are some challenges that are out there too, right, Nathan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, if I have, let's just say, a couple hundred people, or even a couple of different team members trying to figure out what's going on, having a single pane of glass for transparency is really key. That can, just minutes or seconds can make have a huge financial impact. Sometimes companies measure those in hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. So it's really key to have that stuff be transparent, so you can reduce the cost of any kind of performance impact. Like in the immediate sense, and in the big picture, just in terms of raw costs. This solution versus another. We want to make sure we make that whole solution cost effective from the troubleshooting standpoint, and also from the actual the hardware, software license costs as well.
Exactly. Well, why don't we take a moment and for those perhaps that don't fully understand all of the details around DTC, let's give a quick overview. So Nathan, can you quickly describe what is DTC?
Yeah, so DTC is really a global server load balancer. What we're trying to do is add intelligence to DNS records. So instead of having a single record that everybody has to hit, and that there's no choice for that, there are no options for it. We're trying to give you, here's your single record, and then depending on the requirements you have, we can route users to whatever target server that makes the most sense based on the rules for your business.
Yeah,
ultimately, our goals are, they're all outlined here, but having application availability, send you to servers that have the best performance for your users, and then again, give that transparency for troubleshooting, and to just ensure the performance and the direction that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's really good. So just in a nutshell, can you talk a little bit about how it works?
Yeah, so whenever a user hits a certain site, we're basically going to give them an IP address of the server that meets their ideal business requirements, right? And so essentially we're going to be routing traffic to that dedicated IP or server behind the scenes. And then again, we can use server specs or server requirements, or we can send users to things that are like metadata tags, we sometimes call them, or extensible attributes, or what we call them in our product. We can even use extensible attributes on certain objects within our IP address management database to route those users.
Yeah, and so for those that are attending today, and as they look at this, what's in it for them really, in terms of DTC?
Yeah, I mean, this is really in a day going to be like outline here uptime. We want to make sure that your applications are up for and that's as seamless uptime as possible. So everything's transparent, really easy, or automatic as much as possible. Ensure performance metrics that you're looking for, right? So are the servers closest to the user being hit, or ones across the globe? We want to make sure it's the closest servers that are hit, and then a single UI or a single GUI. So everything is transparent to all users that need to know about this information. Or sorry, all admins. They have all the data available to them, like right at their fingertips, so they can any point in time troubleshoot or analyze the situation, know what's going on. And then from a deployment perspective, we want to make this easy to deploy. We want to make sure this is a quick and simple license add-on or whatever it is. We'll make it as easily and accessible as possible to the user.
Yeah, that's really good. I think one of the other things too, right, is how quickly we can deploy DTC. It's a license model, right? So it's really fast, it's easy, and it's cheaper than adding hardware if you already have an Infoblox appliance. Sometimes, right, it takes about less than 20 to 30 minutes to actually spin this up. So one of our
for existing customers,
yep.
It's pretty rapid. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And ultimately, there's a huge value prop here, right, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, especially as people learn more about this product. Other people come back to me and say, "Hey, we just bought XYZ solution. We didn't realize you guys sold a GSLB solution. I really wish you had told us beforehand." And that's actually what got me into this and digging into this more. I mean, apart from my own personal attraction, I like the solution a lot personally. But the customers kept saying, like, I really wish you had educated me earlier. I wish it was easier to find my information on this product. So it's very, very, very cost effective for what it does. So it's pretty compelling business case for this. It's actually kind of an easy sell. It's like VMware in the beginning years. You may as well just do it. It's kind of like that for many users.
All right. Well, why don't we take a look at that value? Ultimately it comes down to better experience at a lower cost. And the problem that exists today for a lot of folks, we've kind of touched on it. Man, if your apps are slow, whether internally or externally, the NOC is going to get some fast complaints, and so ultimately DTC gives you a better user experience, but it also delivers a global load balancing performance that you absolutely need if you're going to be running business critical applications. What are some of the things, Nathan, that help us in terms of the experience and the performance there?
Yeah, I mean, again, there are two unique challenges we often see. Is one is the internal side, and then one is the external side. So they have a little bit different use cases and concerns. But on the internal side or intranet here, being able to basically leverage all of this IP address management or IPAM data and make that usable automatically to our GSLB solution is very, very, very attractive. I mean, so essentially, if I tag networks with EU or some kind of extensible attribute or attribute that makes sense to my organization. Some of my customers use like East-West. Some use like a global kind of region-based, like EU, Asia-Pac, North America, like South America, that kind of thing. They basically ought to be able to automatically take that data and then route users to their geo of interest is really, really key. On the internet side, we basically use a similar external solution called MaxMine, similar to one that F5 uses. We basically use the same thing. We just basically say, hey, you can download, update these rules. It's pretty easy. It's all within the GUI, and feed user location information to our product and route users accordingly. And for the health monitors, we give you a lot of flexibility, a lot of health monitor options available to make sure you can monitor all the key metrics for your applications and route users accordingly. So if you want to say, okay, CPU is really high on the server, don't route a user there. That's we want to be able to give you the tools available so you can kind of make those assessments as quickly as possible and route, based on those rules.
Yeah, that's really good. I think another thing, right, is on the capital and operating expense side. So other application delivery controllers often advocate 2 or more servers, and if those are siloed, boy, that can be a lot of headaches. What about the DTC solution? Can you share a little bit more about that in terms of the cost that we can help companies save?
Yeah, for a lot of existing customers, I'm not sure if POC is the right word. We don't always do like a super formal POC, but they basically go to an existing appliance, type in a command, set temp license, add the license in, and they're often off to the races in trying out our product. It takes maybe 30 seconds, but it's pretty easy to spin up an appliance and actually do a test if you want to do a more formal POC and you don't have Infoblox yet. You just basically download OVA, deploy it, add the licensing you want, and you're good to go. It takes me roughly 15 minutes to set up, so this is pretty easy to do. In terms of the single UI, I mean, this is probably one of the most compelling pieces for me personally, is that I used to use NetScaler, and it was very hard for, let's just say 20 or 30 people to kind of see everything that's going on behind the scenes with that solution, and pair it with each of the different networks and the network rules and the firewall stuff. So being able to have a single UI that has the GSLB solution and all our IPAM data was really critical for us, and be able to put that in our QA and each of the different tiers of our application environments. So QA, dev, and staging, and so on. That was really critical. And then it's just easy to use. I mean, I figured this out on my own. I didn't get a little formal training, to do all the use cases I want. It took me like, maybe an hour to kind of play around with different features and stuff. So this is easy to use. It doesn't take much training.
So Nathan, why don't we take a moment and just look at some of the DTC advantages with regard to the traditional application delivery controllers that are out there. And so, there are some pretty notable differences. So if we look first at traditional ADCs, there are some real advantages with regard to what Infoblox offers. So Nathan, if you can go ahead and advance the slide there. Yep. Thank you. So in most cases, many of the other ADCs that are out there have a bolt-on to the existing layer 2 and layer 3. And so it's really just a bolt-on. It's not fully integrated. Also, they base topology typically on subnet or GeoIP only. There's external reporting, which is commonly found, and then of course there's a bare bones RPZ that doesn't really have any feeds from a security perspective. There's also the challenge of different API integrations, and some of the APIs may not exactly be as user friendly as might be needed. And then of course the upgrade process can really be a pain, especially if you have to do it manually and you have to go one box at a time. So those are typically what customers tell us about when they come to the Infoblox DTC solution. Nathan, what are some of the distinctives that you've found as well?
Yeah, so on the Infoblox side, and we're a DNS provider. We are the leader in the industry. We've been in the space for a long time. We have everything from government agencies using our solution to basically every vertical. Some of the top companies in the world use our product. So we're really a true DNS service. That's what we do. It's our bread and butter. In terms of the second bullet point, topology, we really have all your IP address, your IPAM data. We know where what's there, so we can actually leverage that information to add intelligence to how we serve those records, which is really helpful. So you're not basically manually doing this, which is subject to fingering things, or having issues with the process, or making a mistake. We have fully integrated reporting. The reporting is used for our regular DNS solution, DHCP solution, and so we're just taking advantage of that same solution for DNS traffic control, which is great. It's a phenomenal reporting solution. And then we do have true DNS security. That's something that's what we do as well. So we've been in that space for a very long time, and we have a couple tiers of offerings there. So we're absolutely strong in that space. In terms of the API is, I have some customers that wish they could use the API for every single thing possible. In our product, they virtually can, and so that's a big value add. At least, especially from my financial firm customers, they love that feature set. And then the upgrade process. If you're not upgrading relatively regularly, like within once a quarter, I tell most of my customers to do, but at least once every 6 months, you're doing yourself a disservice. We add lots of features. We really want to give a customer a good experience over the lifetime of they're owning our product. It's not just like you buy it once and it's a static thing and that's what you get. There are absolutely major improvements to every part of our product that we do through regular, just a free software update. So it's a disservice to not do your software upgrades, and we make that extremely, extremely, extremely easy.
Yeah, that's really good feedback and insight. Why don't we take a look now at one of the advantages of DTC, especially around GDPR compliance. That's a fairly substantial issue that, of course, if you're not complying, you could have a user in Europe come to the US, and a lot of folks don't realize that US companies also have to comply with GDPR. And so why don't you walk us through a little bit of how it works here, Nathan?
Sure. Yeah. So on the left-hand side, you're looking at it's a kind of like a standard, the load balancing option, right? So you have this is an Infoblox appliance. You have a pool of target servers, and then we basically route that traffic to those individual servers based on whatever rule sets you have for GSLB. What we're trying to help you with is for on the GDPR side is really this side here. So we can have multiple pools of servers. So something in the Americas, EU, or Asia Pac, we can basically say, okay, we know a user is coming from these network segments because we can see the traffic to DNS server. Let's go ahead and route those users to whatever geo they need to be hitting. And so we make that very, very easy. One thing, when we added the ability to use these extensible attributes, these tags, this was basically kind of just absolutely freeing. My customers love that feature. So, as long as I tag a network with, these different labels, EU, Asia Pac, or Americas, I can then, I know where that user's coming from, and I can route them accordingly. I think people get really creative with those tags and how to use them for GSLB.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that. Why don't we turn our focus now to the algorithms? There are obviously a bunch of different load balancing methods. We've highlighted some of those here so that you can kind of see how that works. We cover round robin, ratio, topology, and global availability. Nathan, can you just quickly summarize? Perhaps everybody knows this already, but we'll just take a second to just summarize what each of these different algorithms, how they work.
Yeah, absolutely. So round robin is sort of like your traditional, basically 50-50. In terms of ratio, it's 50-50. You just alternate between the different servers in a pool. So if you had 2, you just go between both of them. If it's 3, you just do 33% each one, and so on. So round robin is pretty typical. Ratio is basically just defining a ratio. Instead of being 50-50 or whatever the split is evenly, it would be some kind of defined ratio between each of them. So you can say 60% of the traffic here, 40 there, or 60-20-20, or whatever ratio makes sense. So you can weight it accordingly. Topology is really that one where we're using our IPAM data and we're saying, okay, you're coming from this geo location, route to, this set of servers. And again, you can use it for east-west or whatever rule set you want. You can use it in the cloud, for different availability zones, et cetera. And then so that's one piece. That's the internal traffic. And then on the external side, most commonly what people use is the MaxMind database, which basically uses public IPs and routes people accordingly. And then the last one here is global availability. That's where you basically say, this server is first, this server is second, or this pool is first, which is more common. This pool is second. Like a DR use case is the most commonly used one for this, where someone says, as long as my production primary site is up, route all traffic there. If that site should ever go down, then route traffic to a second site or a third site or whatever. You can even do like Americas first. If you're in the Americas, go to Americas first, then EU second, Asia Pac third. And then EU, you can do similar. Go to EU first, Asia Pac second, North America third, or whatever makes sense for your organization.
Yeah, I mean, that gives you just a ton of flexibility, right? So it's really helpful to have those algorithms and make it so easy to route that traffic. What about health monitors? Let's look at some of the health monitors as well. It seems like there's just a variety out there, and ours are different because we have intelligent health monitoring, so it's around HTTPS, SNMP, TCP, SIP, PDP. It's alphabet soup here a bit, but can you just cover just quickly for us, Nathan, what action is involved when we check those servers?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple different options and some additional ones here, but I mean, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is give you many options to check the health status of your either sites or servers or services, so that you can basically pick the ones that make the most sense to or a combination of those to track whether that site or service is up and running properly, right? Or make a determination. You can even do this dynamically of okay, this one's not doing as well as something else. Let's go ahead and route people to to the one that has a little bit less load. So yeah, we're trying to give you many options, either at the server level, individual specific servers, monitoring those, or pools of servers, so you can kind of make the right decisions accordingly.
Yeah, that's really good. Perhaps a lot of our audience are familiar with these, and so why don't we turn the page also now and look a little bit on the integrated reporting and analytics. So Infoblox really has an outstanding Splunk-based reporting and analytics tool. It is built on the Splunk engine. This report that's up actually is just a sample. There's over 100 reports that are available and dashboards that are customizable, but this one is on the DTC response distribution trend. And so Nathan, can you kind of walk us through this one a little bit so that we can see how this works?
Yeah, this is really just kind of it is what it says. It gives you the responses over time. I think what's helpful to just note here is for our reports, they're customizable, and you can set up alerting on them, and you can tweak these to your specific needs, and then make copies or clones of these, and either make them available to the rest of the teams you have, you support, or just to yourself, right? So what's nice is you can create reports that are just for you specifically, various admins or application owners, or set up alerting that includes like CSV exports or PDFs or whatever it makes sense, and they get sent out to those teams, to different teams based on whatever rules that you define. But ultimately, this monitors the distribution trends of the DTC records over time. This is all out of the box. These are canned reports. I would say there's roughly like 20-30 reports most of my customers are interested in using pretty regularly, but there are a lot of edge cases, and that's why we have the 100+ reports, so that you have kind of pre-built ones for those edge cases, and you can kind of cover it as needed.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention too that you mentioned those pre-built reports. They're free, right? I mean, they're part of the Infoblox sample report guide that folks can get and take a look at and see which ones are most applicable to their scenario.
Yeah, that's actually one of the key things. I've had people use it for troubleshooting. They've called me and said, "Hey, Nathan, I'm trying to troubleshoot this issue." And I'm like, "Okay, if you get our free reporting, it'll tell you exactly what's going on." And they're like, "Oh, that's great." And I help roughly like 40 to 50 customers set this up. I mean, we have a deployment guide. It's pretty easy. Sometimes people have little questions that they just missed in the reporting guide or the deployment guide, and they just want some hand holding. But yeah, this is to me, this is invaluable. I used to make custom. I would take data from different or tools that we had, and I would add my own reporting solution. I customize internally at TD Ameritrade. This is like a dream. I love having solutions like this to kind of make that job much easier, so I don't have to do it myself.
Exactly. So that is available as well. And so let's talk now about some of the leading load balancing use cases, Nathan. You know, there's a whole bunch of them, right? So there's internal DNS-based applications. There's disaster recovery, which is one of our more common ones. Folks, of course, are migrating more to the cloud, and so you have an Amazon Web Service or Microsoft Azure, and an on-premise Apex domain routing. We actually have done a special deep dive on Apex domain as well, and I'm sure you can share a little bit more around that. Domain zone consolidation, hosted apps, data center management, and of course software as a service. So these are just a whole variety of different types of use cases, right, that are available with DTC.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're trying to do the same thing for all these different use cases. That's not, I mean, that is kind of core to them. But when people tend to talk about use cases, at least even from my own experience, I talked about them in the terms of my applications. I didn't really care about, you know, this broad, you know, technology itself. I just wanted to make sure the uptime from my applications were what we needed. So I initially wasn't even that knowledgeable on any kind of load balancing. I just knew what we're trying to do and needed a tool to do that, and eventually came to that. So yeah, so it's kind of, some of these are just, they may be similar in concept, but they really are specific to that use case that the user sort of you know, has a painful experience with or is trying to address. But yeah, I like to go through these kind of one by one with my customers, or as it makes sense, and make sure that they have a good understanding of different options available. So maybe there's an administrator that manages their DNS infrastructure or their networks or some aspect of their internal, you know, teams, and that way, as I walk through these with different customers, they can kind of use that data to kind of talk with other teams and look out for other use cases that may make sense that they can help out with. But the quick run through is the top one item is really just generically any kind of internal or external applications that need load balancing. We're there for them. We're a great solution for that. For DR, and we used to have scripts we had to manually do when there was a DNS failover, and every single time the scripts, you know, all of our DNS records were outdated. No one knew what was in the scripts. You know, one guy had the scripts, everybody else knew the application details. But with our solution, everything's transparent in the GUI. If I want to check my applications, I can log in, check the application, see exactly what the targets are. Really, really simple and easy. So I have full transparency and control. Well, control if someone gives it to me anyway. If you want to do self-service. For Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure and Apex domain routing, this is a very, very, very common use case, or even just the ability of having, being able to have a load balancing option that points to Azure, and to AWS, and to on-prem, having an option to be able to point to each one of those, that's in all those different locations. It's not proprietary. I don't have to use a proprietary solution for AWS and then one proprietary different solution for Azure and so on. You use one solution for everything. For GDPR, zone consolidation, this is a very common use case as well. And some customers that have copies of all their zones, you know, like so acme.com is in, one copy is in Europe, another different copy is in the EU, a different copy is in Asia Pac. Our solution allows you to combine all those into one copy of DNS data and just have you know, whatever it needs to be different in each of one of those areas or geos, we'll route that traffic accordingly. We'll give you our GSLB solution gives you a tool to do that based on the logic or based on where the users are coming from. For the internal hosted applications, this is becoming more common as well. Software as a service. You know, the example we give is Microsoft Skype for Business. You know, this is kind of a standard, you know, offering where you can basically say, hey, go to the Microsoft servers and in EU for EU users and North America for North America users and so on. And then the next two are kind of rehash the same kind of ideas. I'll gloss over those for now in the interest of time, but yeah, the same concepts.
That's very good. So let's take a moment now and look at the IPAM integration, and what you're going to see now, what we're going to share with you is just a screenshot of what this looks like. And so, Nathan, go ahead. Why don't you walk us through this?
Yeah, so what we're trying to highlight here essentially is just that you can take either any of these extensible attributes essentially here, and essentially make rules based on those extensible attributes. So if you say if the user's coming from this specific region, or this site, you can literally pick any of these you want, route that user to a different target, right? So it's nice having those baked in. This is fully transparent. Anybody can see what these different regions are and say, okay, if I'm trying to troubleshoot this, like why am I getting this server? I can then take this data here and say, okay, am I in North America? Okay, that makes sense. And now let me go look at the DTC rules and just make sure that that's being routed and set up properly. So you have kind of full transparency using these extensible attributes. And there's even like a rebuild, baked in rebuilds for these to make sure they're always being kept current. So if you make a change here, that gets automatically updated, in the database, so it's current and live.
Yeah, very good. That next slide also really helps the admin direct a user to the right server, right?
Yeah, so this is basically where the admin configures. Let me just see. Yeah, those settings. So when you're doing a configuration for an application, you define what's called topology rule set up top here, and you basically say if they're coming from EMEA, or they're actually, this is actually being pretty intricate, saying if you're coming from Barcelona, or this building, route this user to this specific server. So you can get as really detailed as you want. Most companies I work with have like 1 or 2 levels of data that they work with. Either region or east-west or something like that, where they route users based on this.
It's really good. And then, of course, there's visibility, right, around the integration to a single pane of glass.
Yeah, this is very attractive for most people. They just kind of want to be able to just quickly see how this traffic is set up and what's going on. And this GUI kind of makes it really kind of nice and clean and easy. So they can see the different objects they have. Here's the different servers. There's 2 different pools. Maybe one is one is production and one is DR, or whatever use case makes sense. And then you have the load balance domain name here. So it's kind of very quickly and easily you can see like, okay, all my servers are up. This is the pool that that users may be being sent to, and you can kind of make a determination from there. So this is really nice, clean interface. And we also have some stuff like you can do import and export, and little tiny details are also it's not necessarily visible in this screenshot, but there's also other pieces of this that make it very easy to manage this and keep it current.
Yeah, for those of us that are visual, right, this is an outstanding way to see everything really across the network and check what the status is. So thanks for sharing. That's really good. Let's take a moment now and just quickly highlight, Nathan, some of the new updates or recent updates for DTC. And we're actually going back a little bit to NIOS 8.2, which came out a while back, but we're going to pick up both 8.2 and 8.3. This first one is around load balancing using the round trip delay, and also around the Simple Network Management Protocol, SNMP. Can you walk us through this one?
Yeah, this is one where if you want to be able to make really dynamic decisions, so so we basically say, okay, the CPU load is higher on this server, maybe let's route users to a server that has a lower CPU load. So dynamic decisions. This is kind of a helpful tool to make that decision. So basically, put some different options in there to monitor the performance or monitor the round trip delay, and basically route users accordingly. So it's kind of nice to have this baked in. Again, when you keep in mind when you're setting up these health monitors or load balancing methods, you can these are all things you can configure at different levels. You can have multiple options available to you depending on the rule set you have.
Yep, exactly. Another one that we have is that's a huge advantage. Many customers just love this, is the multi-tier health check support. Why don't you tell us a little more about this one?
Yeah, this I recently had a use case for this one where someone wanted to monitor basically like for a certain server, give different, or basically do a rule for a certain specific server that's different from the pool of servers. So they want to monitor one server more intricately or differently than the rest of the servers in that pool. So if you had 5 servers in a pool of servers for a target, 4 would use the generic rules for the pool, and then one they want to do something a little bit different or monitor it more closely, or maybe experiment with a new health monitor and make sure it's working properly, and not have to affect everything. If they made a mistake. So this is kind of helpful to have as being able to do that multi-tier health check. Yep.
Yeah, and one of the other things, feedback that we've gotten is, by going all the way through to check the pathway all the way to the app server, you might find one in the path that is impaired in some way, and you don't want to route traffic to that. You want to make sure that the pathway is clear all the way to your server, and so this is a great way to take care of that.
Yes, sir.
So another one that we have in 8.3 actually was state persistence. So why don't you just give us a little insight on this one?
Yeah, sure. So sometimes customers will want to basically keep a user on a certain server, the end server, for a certain period of time. So they'll say, so instead of, so every time I hit make a request to the site, or the domain name, instead of routing me to a different server each time, I want to be able to go to the same server each time. So that's what's called, we call that persistence. So we can say, as long as there's no state change for this GSLB configuration, meaning no servers went down, there wasn't any kind of failover or something like that that affected the state itself, keep sending users, to this server until the persistence rule is expired, and then route users. And then basically, as soon as the user comes back in and says, "Hey, give me a server for this site, this application," it'll route them to a new server only at that time. So it gives you another option for managing your users and making sure that maybe their token for their sessions or whatever is maintained for as long as they need to.
Yeah, the other use case around this, of course, is if a member fails over to another device, the user doesn't actually have to re-authenticate, right? So it makes it nice and clean. Yeah,
with 8.3, we had a new option basically to take that to another level, where if an appliance goes down, that persistent state will get transferred essentially to another appliance.
Yeah, it's really good. That's helpful. So SRVs is another area. These are service records, as many of you well know. And so how about this one? How does DNS Traffic Control support this?
Yeah, so in 8.3, we added the option, we added the ability to basically route or basically use SRV records. Before that, we did not get the option. So now if you have any kind of load balancing you want to do with SRV specifically, we support that, which is really nice. This is actually something that I maybe 3 customers asking for, and they really like having this option. This is pretty big value add for them.
And actually, as a bonus right now, so I mentioned earlier that Scott Friedman is on. Scott, perhaps you can unmute here for a moment. Scott has just created a new video on SRV records, and we're actually going to be releasing that very shortly. Scott, can you just give a little bit of an update on that?
Yeah, so it's basically being able to do, based on what network you're in or which site you're in, how it resolves the GC record, which is what Active Directory uses to determine where the location is. But the neat thing is that it gives that ability to non-Windows clients. So if you have a bunch of Mac and Linux users, you'll be able to have them have a similar type of site awareness that a native Windows client would have. So you get a domain controller in the same building or same region. So.
Yeah, that's really good. So Scott actually recorded a video, and we'll be putting that out coming up very shortly on YouTube to help our customers see how that works. So that's just one of the things Nathan mentioned, that we're actively involved in, trying to share new value, new use cases, new applications, and this is one. And so keep an eye on that as that comes forward as well. Thanks so much, Scott, for doing that. So Nathan, why don't we take a look at CSV export and import? This is a huge one with regard to scalability. Why don't you take a moment and share with us about this one?
Yeah, this one I kind of would have liked to have earlier, but it's great to have now, and I really love it. Basically, whatever configuration you have for your different your different DTC objects, you can easily import and export those configurations. So if you say, hey, I want to change 5 different servers, you don't have to manually do them or use an API to do them. You can just export those values, do whatever changes you want to make and import that in. And you can even do it just for one set of objects, or maybe some smaller. You can filter these and do this for smaller data sets. So you can do it from all of them in one shot. So this is really a big value add. I love this feature. And just to kind of highlight for a second, this is another example where all you have to do is upgrade to 8.3 and you have this in here. Same thing with the SRV support. All you do is upgrade to 8.2 and you have that feature added. So what's nice to know is that we were really, really committed as a company to make this solution, DTC, better and better, and we're adding features all the time. So every major version release we've had so far in the last 3 years I've been here, they made some major improvements to this, and it's been awesome for my customers. It's kind of like, so basically like you upgrade and now you have a bonus of being able to do a bunch more that you couldn't do before.
And Nathan, one thing, as we had discussed this earlier, this is not just as easy as, import or export, right? You get a whole variety of different options with this functionality.
Yeah, this is pretty slick. I mean, honestly, when you're doing the import, I kind of expect like 1 or 2, basically override or something like that. This gives you a ton of options. Like you can see here on the screen, like add, override, merge, delete, custom. So when you do the import, it's pretty slick to be able to have all those options available to make sure you're not making mistakes or making a change that has unintended consequences. So it's really nice to use.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Another one that came out in 8.3 was the independent backup. So in that case, right, you have a scenario where you want to do a backup for the DTC configuration. Can you share a little bit about that one?
Yeah, one thing we had, concern with is sometimes people will, so if you do a backup of our solution, you have every setting under the sun, right? You can do anything. Basically, if you took that same backup and you restored it on same environment with just nothing on it, you'd be back up and running within minutes. All the data is there already, assuming IPs are in place. So what's nice now is if I want to import something, for example, and I want to just make sure and just before I do the import, I just do a kind of a paranoid, I'll just do a quick backup and then I'll do the import, and that way if I mess something up, I can always either restore the backup or just do my rollback script for the import. It just gives you another option to be able to do that. It gives you a comfort level. So I can just back up just my DTC records or just my global server load balancing rules and keep those independent from the backups of the entire product. So if something should go wrong, I can restore just the DTC rules and not the entire, bring down basically DNS and DHCP and all the other services by restoring everything, right? So this is a really great addition to give you kind of a comfort level. So if you make a mistake, you can recover it from it pretty easily.
Yeah, that's very helpful. A lot of convenience there. The other thing that has come forward in 8.3 is the government cloud environment support. So for many of you, or perhaps for some of you that might be in the government space, DTC is approved to work on multiple FedRAMP infrastructure clouds. So AWS GovCloud and Microsoft Azure Government, for example, have the discovery capabilities to work in those two environments. And it really helps to confirm Infoblox's next level commitment to NIOS. We are dedicated to top security standards required by federal, state, and local government agencies, and this is just an example of that. We've operated in in the GovCloud since 2016 for AWS, but 8.3 actually enabled us to be certified for Azure Government. So in addition, FIPS 140-2, we passed that earlier. We're just waiting an official announcement from NIST. And then we also are Common Criteria EAL2 certified. We've been doing that since NIOS 7.1. We do that with each major release. So, and then of course, DISA, which is the Defense Information Systems Agency, and the APL, that's their approved products list for DoD. We are on those lists as well. So bottom line for government customers, it certainly is an assurance that DTC and NIOS from Infoblox are meeting those standards, but at the same time for commercial customers, that we are actively committed to high-level security, high-level availability. So that's another key feature that was available in 8.3. Well, let's go ahead now and take a look at a couple of the case studies that we have. One of the big ones that perhaps is a household name for everyone is the Hershey Company. This is, of course, in the vertical food industry, and they were looking specifically for application availability. You know, they've been around for over 123 years. They've got a worldwide brand, almost 15,000 employees. What was the challenges and solution, or really the outcome on this one, Nathan? Can you give us a quick overview?
Yeah, this is really a phenomenal use case in terms of fit for a lot of companies. They basically had a solution in the load balancing space, and were looking for other options and looked at us, and they basically replaced that load balancing solution with a full product suite and our load balancing solution together for cheaper than their renewal of their load balancing solutions. This is a pretty strong use case for us and advocating for us, and probably once a month at least a customer comes to me with a similar use case, and I'll kind of talk it through. So by buying our solution, they basically got a bonus of a DNS infrastructure, DHCP infrastructure option, and then IPAM all baked into one, plus the GSLB, which is great.
Yeah, that's really good. Another thing that we looked at in terms of case study is a major telecom that was, I'm sure probably know the name of it, but we can't reveal that here. But this is a company that is a tier 1 mobile telco operator, and they were most concerned with application availability, and especially using the Infoblox in packet core and subscriber facing network. So a little more about this one, Nathan.
Yeah, this one I was actually surprised by this one when I first heard the use case. I was pretty impressed that our solution could scale that high. But this is basically, this is like a tier 1 provider. Everybody would know this. Probably at least half of you, or if not more, are using their services. But basically, if you're making Wi-Fi calling, they essentially use their internal networking rules that GeoIP information is tied to extensible attributes to determine, like, if you're coming in from North America, route users to this server for Wi-Fi calling versus EU and so on. So that's all they're using is that topology rule set for routing users for Wi-Fi calling. It's pretty slick.
Yeah, that is an outstanding use case. We had another one too that was really in the financial services industry. This is one around banking and finance, and of course they've got to have apps up, right? If they're doing trades, this was a securities brokerage and financial trading firm, and milliseconds count, right? What was the story on this one, Nathan?
Yeah, this one hit close to home, and I've got my own personal list of use cases like this from my own personal experience, including like my literal experience at TD Ameritrade. But yeah, this is just traditional application response and availability, and basically just using the regular health checks that we have to route users to, in this case, it looks like Apache servers for application uptime, just ensure the uptime that they're looking for. And the performance that they're looking for. So all they did was find our solution to be more cost effective than something else that was out there. So this is kind of like our bread and butter use case, and many customers are using us for stuff like this.
All righty. Well, why don't we just take a moment? We just have a few minutes left. So why don't we just give a quick summary? Why Infoblox DTC? Really, it comes down to, as we've shared today, full visibility that you're going to get through security, our true cyber intelligence, 30+ vendor integrations, 14 billion threat indices. On the compliance side, we support GDPR. And of course, we have real-time reporting with 100 plus pre-built dashboards and customizable reports built on the Splunk engine. So those are some really compelling points. What about reliability, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of just to recap a lot of our core use cases. So just making sure you have application uptime, getting the performance you want, going to the servers that are closest to your users. The geo balancing is basically, again, like just using that all your internal data to route users, or the external MaxMind data to route users to the servers that are closest to them. the Infoblox Grid integration, really we're just saying that this integrates with your existing Infoblox solution if you have it, and so a single pane of glass for your load balancing needs as well as for your IPAM and DNS DHCP needs. So that one I have a personal feeling for. I like that a lot. Having basically, I don't have to basically learn a new GUI or manage a new GUI for that. And a lot of times you don't have that option of looking at a GUI and some of the custom GSLB solutions for a lot of the team members you have. For server validation, delivering traffic to, basically be able to do multiple health checks, be able to say, okay, as long as at least 2 of these 3 health checks are good, go ahead and send users to these servers versus all of them or any of them. Having lots of options for server validation is really key. And then scalability, making sure you can easily manage and scale up and down to whatever your needs are. So if your company needs to grow 20% every year or 100% or whatever it is, we can help you with that.
Yeah, and another one too is, in the area of automation, having that ability to look at IP subnets and GeoIP and extensible attributes is really an advantage. The API automation and being able to match that web GUI and integrate with new apps and other systems. Of course, our grid software updates that are really fast, 4 clicks to update as opposed to going box by box, and then ultimately sharing this kind of data automatically with our reporting through the security ecosystem. So all just some really, really important things to consider if you're looking at a global server load balancer. Let's look now at some next steps. We're out of time here, but we wanted to just share with you, there's a lot of free Infoblox resources. We have data sheets, white paper, solution notes, videos. We have the Hershey case study that we touched on today. The analyst report we'll be sending out to you. We'll also be available to discuss your load balancing needs. If you need to see your use case in a lab, our SEs, our system engineers will be glad to set that up. And then, of course, we can do a cost-benefit analysis. All that's available on our website, or you can also reach out by phone. The number is shown there, or you can simply send an email to info@infoblox.com. Did we get any quick questions that came through, Nathan or Scott?
I didn't see any, but I wasn't really looking. I apologize.
Yeah, one came through about putting the functionality in the cloud. Nathan, why? That was one of our key use cases, right?
Oh yeah, that's pretty common. Actually, that's a ridiculously common one because we have Apex name routing. So I even have a customer. It's a household name. You would know them. You have product in your house with them. There's actually 2 of them like that. They use it. Either they use us for all their instead of Route 53 for their Apex name routing. But you can, if you want to put us in the cloud, you have to have an appliance of ours either in the cloud somewhere. You can put a smaller appliance if you need to, and just put our license on, and you're good to go. That's a very, very common use case.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
especially
good.
Especially when we talk about, especially when we talk about like availability zones, routing traffic for that, and be able to be dynamic, and then maybe in some cases routing on-prem or to Azure or some other platform. It can be pretty, you get to make sure you can address that. That's a good question.
Another one, just quickly before we end here, is around the API. We actually have some resources that are out and available right now on how to use the API, and so there's some video links. If you go to YouTube and look at the Infoblox channel, there's some great resources on how quickly to use the API to set up when you're creating and setting up new applications. So those are available as well. So for Scott Friedman that was on, thank you. Also for Nathan Snook. Thanks so much, Nathan, for your insights today. We do appreciate everyone as well for your time with us today. We hope you found this informative, and we thank you for your time. Please stay tuned as we offer future overviews and demos on other solutions. But for now, thanks again for your time today. This concludes our presentation. Thank you very much. Have a great day.